Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, to the second annual Young African ConneXions Summit, hosted by the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. I am Nana Mafere-Dramina, and I will be your host this evening. This year, the Mayor's Office on African Affairs is celebrating its 10th anniversary. Woo-hoo! And we are so excited to be hosting this summit in conjunction with this celebration. So for 10 years, the Mayor's Office on African Affairs has served as a pillar for the African community in Washington, D.C. The office has played an instrumental role in ensuring that services such as health, education, employment, safety, and economic development are available to the district's African community. By working with the DC government, federal government, and community partners, some of which are in the room right now, the Mayor's Office on African Affairs has been able to achieve so much in these past 10 years. Themed impact through leadership, civic engagement, and social entrepreneurship, the Young African ConneXions Summit this year is directly in line with the office's youth engagement programs and supports Mayor Bowser's policy priorities, which ensures that each resident gets a fair shot. With us today are about 50 Yali Fellows from Howard University and Wagner College. Please stand up so we can recognize you if you're in the room. Welcome to DC. Okay, so before we get a lot of this stuff rolling, we need to kind of go through some housekeeping rules to get this running smoothly. Everyone has a phone, right? Come on, guys. You guys were playing Pokemon 5 seconds ago. Don't front. Okay, so if you have a phone, pull it out, go on Twitter, look for us at DC Mayor OAA and follow us. Follow the conversation / ask questions and be a part of the conversation online using the hashtag YAX2016 or hashtag MOAA turns 10. And we have it down here as well for you to see. Also, at the end of each panel discussion, we're going to allocate 10 minutes. Pardon? Wi-Fi? Oh. Me and Madam MCO. I'm sure we can get that. We'll work it out for you, okay? So a few housekeeping rules again. Back to so at the end of each panel, we're going to have 10 minutes allocated to Q&A. We ask that you kind of hold on to your questions, be courteous, and keep your comments and questions very brief because there's a lot of people in here and many people want to ask questions, so be mindful of that. Also, this is the exciting part, our partners and sponsors from South African Airways are raffling off one ticket to South Africa. Yes, free ticket, free. So if you haven't registered already, once we go on break, please go to the registration desk and ask how to register so you can qualify to win. And yes, you have to stay through the whole thing to claim your win. Yep, that's the caveat. And lastly, we're going to be doing our Mandela Day of Service tomorrow, which is we're going to be cleaning the Anacostia River from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. This is in commemoration of Nelson Mandela's birthday. Please come out. We're going to share more information later on in the evening. So to get this rolling, I will like to invite Dr. Anthony Wuta, Provost and Chief Academic Officer of Howard University, to give a few remarks.
Thank you, Nana. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, Akwaba. Okay, maybe that's a bit better. It's my honor and my pleasure to welcome each of you to Howard University. We have come to know Howard as the Mecca, as Howard has had a long-standing commitment to the education, the training, and the capacity of people from Africa and throughout the African diaspora. It's especially my pleasure to welcome the Office of the Mayor and their collaboration with us in this in so many ways. I'm going to ask if the fellows from Howard University and Wagner will again stand and be acknowledged, because you are a significant part of this activity this evening. Thank you. This is the third year that Howard is hosting an institute of the Mandela Washington Fellowship, and we are especially proud and pleased of the fellows that we've received and the representation that you have made of the countries that you have come from. Now, I'm sure that Wagner is equally proud of their fellows, and we're just excited that we have this opportunity to bring you two together and think about other ways that we can collaborate and look towards developing opportunities for you both here and when you go back home. I wanted to acknowledge a number of dignitaries who are here in addition to our speaker, Ambassador Omar Aruna, if you will please acknowledge him. Ambassador Andeme, who is from Equatorial Guinea. Ambassador Faye from the Gambia. And we also have representatives from the Republic of South Africa and from Mozambique. Thank you. This is a significant event, and I'm especially pleased that we take note of the activity tomorrow, the conduct of the Day of Service in honor of President Nelson Mandela. For many of us, Nelson Mandela was not simply just the president of South Africa. He represented all that we saw that was good and aspirational in leadership in Africa and throughout the world. So I think it's especially fitting that we are gathering this evening in preparation of the commemoration of the Day of Service in his honor, and also the renaming of the YALI program to the Mandela Washington Fellowship. For us, Nelson Mandela is also an alum of Howard University. He was recognized and the recipient of an honorary degree. Howard was one of the few American universities that President Mandela visited shortly upon his freedom in South Africa. And so we're especially pleased again to welcome each of you. This is going to be an excellent event, and we look forward to hosting you not just today, but on many occasions to follow. Thank you and have a good evening.
At this time, we would also like to introduce you all to the Director of the Mayor's Office on African Affairs, Director Mamadou Samba. Mamadou was appointed by Mayor Bowser in 2015 and is originally from Dakar, Senegal. Mamadou also served on the Commission on African Affairs and has been a strong advocate for diverse African diaspora communities. Mamadou has extensive experience in addressing challenges faced by African immigrants in the district and nationwide. Please join me in welcoming our Director, Mamadou Samba.
HU? I didn't hear anything. HU? I don't know what you said for Wagner. What is it? Wagner? Good afternoon, everybody. I used to be a comedian in my other life, but greetings to everybody, to all the participants, the dignitaries, the Washington Mandela Fellows from Howard and Wagner, and to all the organizations that have joined us here today. On behalf of the Mayor's Office on African Affairs and on behalf of the Commission on African Affairs, I'd like to welcome you to the second annual Young African ConneXions Summit. The summit and the Mandela Day of Service have both grown beyond our wildest expectations since its inception in 2015. And have now become signature program for the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. For example, last year we were joined by 25 Washington Mandela Fellows from Howard University, and this year we were joined by 50, including those from Wagner College that traveled from New York today to be part of this program. So I really appreciate it for coming, and I really wanted to thank you. We've also added a few more partners this year to make the event stronger, and sponsors such as the UNESCO Center for Peace, represented here by Guy, my brother. Serve DC, represented here by my colleague, Director Delano Hunter. Serve DC is the Mayor's Office of Volunteerism, so if there's anything happening in DC, snowstorms, he's the gentleman that coordinates all of that, so you can blame him for all of those things. We also have South African Airways, represented here by Damien and Deborah. And then I'd really like to thank them very much because they never hesitated when I emailed them and said they want to be part of this program. And so they donated 2 airline tickets. In actuality, they donated 6 airline tickets. And the other 4, you have to stay tuned on how to win it, right? And so we'll share more information about it in the next few weeks. And so as Dr. Woto mentioned, and I'd also like to thank him for being here. And we also are joined by representatives from several embassies, including my brother and friend, Dr. Sheikh Omar Faye, Ambassador of Gambia, Mr. Excellency Omar Aruno from Benin, and Excellency Miguel Andena from the Guinea Equatorial. And really thank you for coming, and all of the excellencies and dignitaries that are present. And so this event would also not be possible without having such a great team to help you and support you, even when you go crazy sometimes. And so in this case, I'd really like to thank my team, represented here by Dr. Heran Sereke Brahan. I think she's out there signing people, who's the deputy director, who I really like to thank very much. Bezawad Mane, who's our outreach specialist. She's not here today. She just had a baby boy a month ago, and his name is Noah, and we'd like to really wish them the best. We have Andy, our outreach specialist, who just became a U.S. citizen this morning. So congratulations. You know what that means, right? I'm not going to work. Okay, good. We also have our dynamic interns, Ali Kaba, I don't know what they are, they're all working Ali's over there. Dano, Ndembeka, Semhal, Hagos, and Laju, who is also from Nigeria. So we really like to give a big round of applause. And last but not least, we also have our strong partners in terms of members of the DC Commission on African Affairs, whose job it is to represent the African community, to make sure they stay relevant, they defend their interests, and they be part of the conversation. And we have our very own MC, Nana. She's part of the Commission on African Affairs. We have Kadis from Ethiopia, part of the Office on African Affairs. And I think we have our chair, Dr. Akuya Asare. I don't know where they are, where she's sitting. Akuya? Okay, she's outside. We have Chibu, also part of the commission. And we also have Lydia Nylander, who's also part of the commission. So we really like to thank them. It is my hope that this summit, which is themed Impact Through Leadership, Civic Engagement, and Social Entrepreneurship, will stimulate collaborative dialogue, inspire result-driven leadership, and foster intercontinental connections of diverse ideas and communities. Connection, as it is used here with a big X, has become a central theme of our programs and events during the past 18 months. Because by making connections, we take further steps towards stronger communities and the needed change that we all are inspiring to see. Connections between the African diaspora in the US, the African diaspora in those on the continent, connections between students and professionals, between the public sector and the private sector, between generations, cultures, and around the ideas that impact us all. And so this year, the Mayor's Office and the Commission on African Affairs celebrate 10 years, marking a decade of service to the African community and celebrating a rich cultural diversity in the District of Columbia. During the past 10 years, we've made significant accomplishments to ensure that the African community takes full advantage of the wide range of resources and information provided by the DC government. Particularly since January 2015, we've celebrated tangible achievements that directly impact our community. For example, the establishment of the African Community Public Safety Task Force to brainstorm on the public safety challenges of the African community. The task force led to the establishment of the first ever African liaison affiliates team within the police department, thereby helping to address public safety challenges stemming from the lack of understanding, fear of law enforcement, and cultural and language barriers. And I'm glad to know that we have Officer Brian Davis. Please stand up. Officer Brian Davis is part of the, he's off duty, but he can still arrest you, right? And so Officer Davis is part of the liaison unit that works directly with our office to address the public safety challenge of the African community. So I'd really like to thank you for coming. To address critical gaps in demographic information, we launched the first ever collaborative research project focused on the African population in DC. As we speak, a report is currently being edited and finalized in partnership with George Mason University's Institute for Immigration Research, which will provide much needed data for subsequent policy discussions and for various stakeholders. In November 2015, in partnership with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer and Coders for Africa, we launched the very first African Diaspora Coding Academy called ECHO. This program, which is the first of its kind for the African community, aims to bridge the digital divide by providing web and mobile application training to 120 African residents. I am happy to report that today, over 70 African residents have completed the program, and we have some in the audience. As part of our multicultural awareness programs, we produce and screen Diaspora in Dialogue, a film that highlights the contribution and presence of the African community. I was just informed by the Oscars that we were nominated for an Oscar, and so look out for that at some point. I'm just kidding, of course. We bid farewell to all commissioners and welcome new commissioners on the team, and together we hosted 2 town halls, organized workshop on President Obama's executive action on immigration, participated in the Africa Day celebration with the African Diplomatic Corps, supported Mayor Bowser's plan to end homelessness in the district and to raise the minimum wage to $15 per hour by 2020. We even presented our programs to Grammy-winning artist Youssou N'Dour, South Africa singer Ivan Shaka Shaka, and legendary Ethiopian singer Mahmoud Ahmed. But perhaps the most memorable of achievements is the 2015 inaugural Mandela Day of service with the Washington Mandela Fellows from Howard University, during which an ancient discovery was actually made in the form of a VHS video cassette tape. I was also just informed that if you want to, it is being curated at the Smithsonian, next to King Tut, so you guys have to go and check it out. It is without a doubt that this past decade has made us, and the next one will definitely define us. But we can't do it alone. We need your help. We need the African community to support us. We need you to support us in helping our mayor ensure that every single African has a fair shot. We need you to get civically engaged, to get involved in the discussion, to be an active part of the conversation, and to shy away from what divides us and lead towards to what unites us as a community. I look forward to a successful summit, and I hope you will join us tomorrow for the Mandela Day of service, and who knows, you may find another ancient discovery. I don't know what it is. And so, thank you very much for all of that. Before I introduce our keynote speaker, I'd like to share a video message from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee from Texas. Congresswoman Lee's support for the African community is undeniable, and we really like to thank her for making this event a success. So please direct your attention to the screen for 2 minutes.
Hello, I'm Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and I represent the 18th Congressional District in Houston, Texas. I loved Nelson Mandela. I loved him because of his spirit, his leadership, and what he means to the world, even in death as he did in life. And so this afternoon, or today, or this morning, or the time that you will see this, I bring you greetings to today's young leaders, distinguished guests, and organizers of this exciting and important initiative entitled the Young African ConneXions Annual Summit, spearheaded by Washington, D.C., Mayor's Office on African Affairs under the leadership of Mamadou Samba. In his autobiography, Nelson Mandela wrote, "I will continue fighting for freedom until the end of my days." And of course, you need to continue to fight for freedom. After 27 years cramped in a jail cell in Robben Island, Mandela emerged as an icon of hope and change, which drove positive impact in our world. Indeed, through his leadership, Mandela is an enterprising community lawyer, propelled many young leaders in Africa and beyond towards pursuing lives and passions in civic engagement and social entrepreneurship in a way that shaped our world and made our world a better place. His unbending resolve to demand equality, to break South Africa from the chains of apartheid and hearken a cry for freedom that continues to echo across the planet. This echo is the true legacy of Madiba. His legacy is one of committed leadership in the most difficult of circumstances, unwavering and courageous opposition to injustice and determination to forge progress and reconciliation out of the harsh conflicts of the past, and continues to inspire us to guard the torch of freedom for generations to come. Even today, as America grapples with the issue of gun violence and seeking a place of commonality and unity, Madiba's spirit of redemption and reconciliation follows us all. His lifelong example and his call to never cease working for a better and more just community and world is in a great part of why we're all here today. Therefore, you must take note that you all are part of a powerful and inspiring legacy of a man who dedicated his life and liberty to freedom, equality, and opportunity for all. In fact, important initiatives like the Mandela Washington Fellowship empowers young African leaders to emulate Madiba's commitment to service to his people, his country, and humanity at large. I commend, I congratulate, I respect the leadership of President Obama's impeccable leadership of launching this Fellows Program, of which I had an early opportunity to participate in. This yearly summit, coupled with President Obama's Mandela Fellowship Program, is so timely, given the fact that our world is home to 1.8 billion young people between the ages of 10 and 24, with the youth population growing fastest in developing parts of the world, like Africa, where over 60% of the population consists of young people, according to some estimates. Congratulations to you all. You're young leaders. You are the future, and you are today. I'm looking forward to your grand and wonderful leadership, and enjoy this summit, but come away empowered by the spirit of Nelson Mandela.
Thank you very much. We'd also like to thank the Office of Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton for issuing congressional recognition certificates to all of the participants and the Mandela Washington Fellows who are taking part of the summit. And actually, I would like to hand out the congressional certificates for Howard University to Dr. Lucinda Akwe and Dr. Jason Fitzgerald from Wagner College, please. We have the Howard 50 of them, 25. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we have the Wagner one. Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. At this point, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Excellency Omar Aruna from Benin. Mr. Aruna is the ambassador of the Republic of Benin to the United States. And in addition to the US, he's also Benin's representative to Mexico, the Organization of American States. He also coordinates country engagement with the World Bank, IMF, and the International Financial Corporation in Washington, D.C. Prior to his appointment, Ambassador Aruna was Executive Vice President of Good Work International, a U.S. multinational partly founded by UN Ambassador Andrew Young, and former aide to Dr. King, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., a civil rights leader. The most important thing I want you to know about Mr. Excellency Aruna is that I had a chance to meet with him a couple of months ago, where he invited me for lunch. And I was really inspired by his story. Being part of the diaspora for over 20 years, and working his way up to be on the other side and be an ambassador of his country in the United States. And when we were planning this event together, we were brainstorming on the kind of individual that could tell both stories, be on a diaspora and have that much impact, and also be on a continent or represent his country in the US and continue to have an impact. And we wanted to have him speak on leadership and his experience. And I was really inspired by it, and I wanted to share that with you guys, and this is why we invited. So please welcome Excellency Omar Aruna.
Thank you very much. No problem. Thank you, Mamadou, for a wonderful introduction. Wow. Excellencies, Ambassador Faye, Excellency, Ambassador Miguel, Dr. Anthony Wuto, representative of South Africa and Mozambique. Dear Mamadou Samba, thank you for having me here today. I want to start really by thanking Mamadou for his kind introduction. I want to thank him as well for his dedication. This microphone is not doing me any service. Basically, I want to thank him for his dedication and service as a champion for the African diaspora in the nation capital. Please, a round of applause for Mamadou. I commend Mamadou for his leadership and the outstanding job he's doing as a director of the DC Mayor Office on African Affairs. And I congratulate the Mayor's Office on African Affairs for a decade of service to the African community in Washington, D.C. I am also honored to share this podium with good friends that are sitting here and some good friends that also were in the panel or will be in the panel. Of course, I want to recognize our guests of honors, those Yali, these extraordinary young men and men, leaders from Africa that are here today. Please, a round of applause for the Yalis. These young women and men transforming their communities and their country. And let me tell you, I've met some Yali in my days, and I'm always impressed by all of them. This year, Young African ConneXions Summit is exploring leadership, civic engagement, social entrepreneurship. The summit is promoting volunteerism and encouraging advocacy to build community for both continental African and African diaspora community. Dear friend, as you know, the sub-Saharan African population living in the United States is approximately 3.8 million, let's say 4 million. We collectively send back to Africa via formal channel over than 30 billion yearly. We are the most educated immigrants group in the US. More than 43% of us hold a bachelor degree or higher. I could bore you ad nauseum with similar statistics all day long. But my point is not to gloat over that what might seem to be good indicators of success for our diaspora here in the US, but rather highlight our collective potential for success as community if we only decide to fulfill it. Our potential for success, yes, not quite a success, just the potential. Yes, we must understand that success consists of being successful, not in having the potential of success. Like they say, any wide piece of ground is a potential for palace, but there is no palace until it's built. So, to fulfill our collective potential for success and rise as a strong diaspora in the US, each of us individually must fulfill its own potential for success. In other words, it's your individual responsibility that will enable us as a collective to attain success. As an individual, endeavor to become successful, soon we'll have a successful diaspora in North America. So, how do we do this? How, as an immigrant, can I take the path for success in the United States of America? In case you are wondering, before I became my country's ambassador to the US, I was and still I am a 26-year veteran African immigrant to the US. So I know one or two things about coming to America. Anyway, considering that we are a selfie generation, you know, probably you will understand better my message if I've shared my own experience with you. So I'll do a selfie on me. so to speak, huh? An insight to my own story and the lesson I've learned might help you pave your own road in fulfilling your full potential for success. Lesson number 1. This is Howard University, so we can act like we all teachers, right? So lesson number 1. Learn new things and be flexible. My goal coming to America was to attend medical school. But I also knew that any career path for me must have African component. Fortunately or unfortunately, I soon realized that medical school was too costly in the US. Obviously, you all know that, right? I didn't know that when I get here. I found it out right here. So, what I did, I must be flexible and ready to learn new things. I enrolled as a computer science major. After graduation, I was able to land an internship at the World Bank group in Washington, D.C. Great. But to my surprise, I was assigned to the mail room to sort mail. So at that moment, I learned my second lesson. Being frustrated or keep a positive attitude about the situation. The choice was mine. So the lesson I learned was to develop a positive outlook no matter what the circumstances are. Now, few weeks into my internship, sorting mail with a degree in computer science, I arranged a meeting with the director of ICT department, and I shared the idea that I could add value to the department and suggested how we could automate process in the mail center for efficiency purpose. Apparently impressed with my idea, he offered me my first contract at the World Bank as an information technology officer. Now I'm doing well. However, few years fast forward, I learned early in my formative years that one must always seek better position or aspire to greater things than he currently holds. I could have just stayed at the World Bank as an information technology officer and have a good life, but will I have a great life? That's the question. So, in French, the expression we use is ne jamais dormir sur ses lauriers, literally meaning my third lesson to you, never rest on your laurels. Although the income was decent for someone just fresh out of college, I did not have that sense of fulfillment I was expecting working at the World Bank. I was not quite sure where my role or work into the overall ideal of helping with the development of Africa was in that context. Yes, I was working at the World Bank, and the World Bank was working in Africa and helping the continent develop. But as an individual, was I contributing something directly? I could not answer that question positively. Therefore, after 3 years, I decided to leave the organization. With a new lesson, the fourth one in my toolkit. Lesson number 4, have a clarity in your goal. Important. From that last episode at the World Bank, I knew what I wanted, and I was very clear. I would think I was narrowly too clear about my new job search. My first criterion was that anywhere I went, had to be an organization with Africa as a primary focus. Better yet, if Africa was the only business of that organization or corporation, then that would have been my perfect job. Luckily enough, I was able to land my next position at one of the US oldest and largest NGO, working essentially in Africa. As the network manager, I was able, among other things, to lead successfully the organization's Y2K effort through the 27 African field office. Needless to say that it was a very fulfilling and satisfying experience for me personally. As this is a path for success, I didn't think I should have stopped in my way. So, as you know, to be successful, and that's my lesson number 5 for you, you have to have ambition. Without ambition, there is no success. Therefore, having interacted with Africa for 4 years in my previous job, I felt that I was ready for prime time. Now I have ambition for myself. That's when I knew I was on the right path for success. So, I created my own consulting firm to do business in Africa in the area of information technology, consulting and market access and facilitation. And I then left the organization to practice full-time. With my newfound ambition, my part-time attitude, the stakes are now high because nobody is employing me, I'm employing myself. So is the risks and the potential for failure. Like any entrepreneur, I only eat what I kill. That's clear enough. So, lesson number 6 come into play. Failure is inevitable when you are an entrepreneur. But my lesson to you is don't cause failure, but hunt for success. You will fail as an entrepreneur, but don't curse it. Just go for the success. Soon enough, I realized that earning a serious income from startup company, essentially doing business in and with Africa from the US, was not as easy as it appeared. You can sell something in Africa when the money comes back in dollar is no money. You know that. So I found that out soon enough doing business, sitting in the US and trying to do business in Africa. So I had to readjust my plan without giving up. I started also doing business in the US, providing IT support as a way to supplement the income deriving from any project I was doing in Africa, because the goal for me was to participate in the development of my continent. So the goal has not shifted. The circumstances for me were shifting, but the goal still remained the same. That's how I met my next employer. In fact, during that time, my consulting firm competed and lost against my next employer in a bid for a project that, in my view, would have been a major accomplishment for my career and my ambition, representing and advocating for an African country here in the US. In this case, the Republic of Benin, which was my own country of origin. I lost a bid to become a representative as a lobbyist for Benin in the US against another firm. That was my goal all along. There, I lost it. I lost that opportunity to another firm. What do I do? Lesson number 7. You learn fast in that part. Grab the opportunity even if you don't think it's there before it completely fades away. So I have to think about my next move. Considering that my initial goal didn't change, despite my failure to reach it the first time, I had no other choice to recover quickly from my situation. Afterthought, I arranged a meeting with the bid winner and negotiated to join his team. The firm became my employer and I was put in charge of that project. Now, I was representing and advocating on behalf of an African nation here in the United States before the White House and Congress. Soon enough, I was advocating for few other African countries and was getting paid for it. Then the call came in, teaching me another lesson. My lesson number 8, giving back. One major part of fulfilling your individual potential and enable us collectively to attain success is to give back. So, for me, becoming the Benin Chief of Mission to the US is my way of giving back to my fellow countrymen. So those are the 8 lessons I would like you to think about this afternoon. Dear friend, these are few lessons I have learned on my own journey to fulfilling my own potential to success. This is not necessarily an absolute recipe for success. Just know that in life, nothing is granted, but nothing is impossible. So, in your own journey, be a risk taker, be persevering, be tenacious, and always think about giving back. Because, and I quote Nelson Mandela, there is no passion to be found playing small in settling for a life that is less than the one you are capable of living. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Omar Aruna, for your insightful lessons on becoming a successful leader. I mean, great words. So before we move forward, we have a couple of people to thank who have allowed this to happen. Aside from our summit, also tomorrow's Mandela Day of Service, our sponsors and our partners. So we'd like to thank Howard University. We would also like to thank Wagner College, the Washington Mandela Fellows, UNESCO Center for Peace, Serve DC, South African Airways, the Alice Ferguson Foundation, the Department of Public Works, Department of Parks and Recreation, and lastly, Path to Greatness. So we're going to move forward into our first panel. And at this time, we're going to invite our moderator for this panel, Dr. Mena Demese. She is the Vice President of Policy and Senior Research and Policy Analyst for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, Inc. She also serves as a historian and an executive board member for the National Conference of Black Political Scientists and has served as the National Youth Coordinator for the Society of Ethiopians established in the diaspora since 2000. So this panel is going to be for 45 minutes. And we have 10 minutes allocated to Q&A. Please keep your questions brief and wait till the end to ask those questions. Follow the conversation online, tweet about it using our hashtags #YAX 2016, as well as #MOAA turns 10. So at this time, please help me in welcoming the moderator, Dr. Mena Demese.
Thank you so much, Nana, and good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? Good? I remember this time last year and can't believe we're back again at it. The time flies. I'm very excited about today's discussion. I would like to ask our distinguished panelists to actually make their way to the stage while I introduce you. I bring greetings from our President and CEO, Shawnice Washington, from the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation. You heard from our Vice Chair, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. And we are particularly excited to be part of this conversation because of the increasing importance of coalition building, especially within the U.S. Black population. So the title for today's panel, as you can see, is Cultivating Leadership, Galvanizing Volunteers for Community Building. And obviously civic engagement is a big part of that. So as a political scientist, I will lift up those stories in terms of how we all can be active in this room. So without further ado, let me read your bios and then we'll jump right into the conversation. So we have Delano Hunter, if you can, you just met him earlier, director of Serve DC. He's a native Washingtonian and was appointed in December 2015 as the director of Serve DC. Hunter's orientation for community service began at Springern Senior High School, where he served as president of the Key Club and Student Government Association. Hunter's community service continued both nationally and globally, while serving as the president of the Student Government Association at Delaware State University, where he graduated summa cum laude with a BS in business management and studied abroad in Europe and Africa. We're reading these bios too, so you get a sense of people's journeys, what brought them to where they are today. Hunter worked for Nike Inc. in Beaverton, Oregon as a member of the highly selective retail development program. In Ward 5, where Hunter resides with his wife and son, Hunter went on to serve as an organizer in the Brentwood community. In this capacity, Hunter worked closely with residents on workforce development, truancy prevention, and community empowerment initiatives. Currently, Hunter is completing his MBA at Johns Hopkins University Carey School of Business and serves as president of the Gateway Community Association. Give it up for Mr. Delano Hunter. And next, to my immediate left, we have Pape Sam, who's the chairman and CEO of Global Youth Innovation Network. He is a social entrepreneur with 20 years of experience in youth entrepreneurship, women leadership, I like that, and partnership building. A driving force and empowering agent of change for youth globally, Mr. Sam co-founded and serves as the chairman and CEO, as I just mentioned, of GYIN, a knowledge and business incubator for over 6,000 young leaders, entrepreneurs, innovators, and farmers in almost 100 countries. At his organization, he develops programs and policies that address the root causes of youth unemployment while increasing the opportunities young people have to obtain a decent job or start a successful business. He is an active public speaker on the national and international front and has spoken at the Qatar Foundation, Gandhi Research Foundation, World Food Prize, to name a few. I'm almost done. Mr. Sam has designed many projects including global shared value leadership, entrepreneurial innovation-based experimental learning, creating opportunities for rural youth, social entrepreneurship integration program, Children for Innovation, the list goes on. And he holds a Bachelor of Science in Business Management and a Master's degree in Executive Leadership from American University. Mr. Sam, right here. To my far left, we have Mr. Selvin Waldron, who's the Executive Director of Life Pieces to Masterpieces. Mr. Waldron is joined Life Pieces in February 2012 as Director of Development and Grants and immediately began to implement the organization's 3-year resource development plan. Prior to joining Life Pieces, Selvin was a United Nations Association Graduate Fellow where he worked with a cohort of 18 Washington area graduate students from 5 DC colleges to analyze the impact of the UN Human Rights and Environment Program and evaluated the success of the Millennium Development Goals. Selvin has a long professional background as a contract and project manager, having sourced and managed over $40 million in federal and local government funds in support of human development and/or environmental programs. He's completed training as a citizen diplomat, proctored by the Civic League of Washington, D.C. Mr. Waldron remains an active member of the UN Association and the National Forum for Black Public Administrators. Mr. Waldron earned both his BBA in management and his MBA with a concentration in international business from the University of the District of Columbia. Let's give him a hand. And last but certainly not least, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Ntumbenle? Oh, you're gonna have to teach me that one. How do you say your last name? Mkize. It's kind of like I'm harking a little bit. Okay. All right. So I know you have quite a crowd here. We are delighted to have you with us as a Mandela Washington Fellow. She holds a Community and Development Studies degree from the University of KwaZulu-Natal. She has over 8 years of experience working in the public health sector and joined Orbis Africa in April 2013. And as project manager, her duties include overall management of activities and relationships between host governments, hospitals, and public health servants in the human resources for the iHealth Initiative in South Africa, Zambia, Malawi, Tanzania, and Uganda. So let's give it up for Mr. Mkize. All right, so I have my time housekeeper with me, and what I'd like to do before having them dive right on is just set a context for you for why all the fellows in the room and all of you in here, why the African diaspora is so important at this time. You know, I'm sure you have been tuning into the news. I like to share a couple statistics of which you are probably already familiar with. We're 4%, we as in the African foreign-born population, 4% of the foreign-born population, and also about 4% of the US Black population. There are a lot of firsts that I talk about. I think it's important. Obviously, having the first Black president in the United States has made a lot of the constituencies that identify by their ethnicity in this country more visible, right? And here's where you come in. And the importance of the African diaspora has never been more fascinating to study what's going on from the political science perspective, but even never more inspiring and exciting to see the ways in which our community is being seen, being heard, organizing. And so you're gonna hear some of our young leaders here talk about that today. I do wanna mention that, you know, the past 2 decades have been unreal. So if you look at the share of the Black vote in the last election, for the first time ever in American history, the Black vote was higher in terms of the share that came out over the white vote. You know, there were a lot of firsts, no special interest campaign, first Black president, however you define that. You also have upwards of 130 million people coming out to vote in the US elections. Never happened before, right? You have former Secretary Clinton sort of deciding and making it a point in her administration during her tenure to basically put the diaspora as a critical, population that she sees as bridge makers in the case of U.S. foreign policy abroad. And so, we know we exist and we know how we're organizing, but even members of Congress are recognizing this. So for those of you who may not know, in the U.S. House of Representatives, I'd like to just tell you that there are caucuses that represent our groups. So Congressman Don Payne Jr. of New Jersey has created a Congressional African Immigrant and Diaspora Caucus. Congressman Mike Honda, Japanese American district from the 15th, Congressman from the 15th District of San Jose, created a Congressional and Ethiopian American Caucus. It's been around for over a decade. There's a Congressional Cameroonian Caucus that was created recently. There's a South Sudan and Sudan Caucus, which has been around, again, almost for about 10 years, and also a Congressional Nigerian Caucus. And none of these caucuses actually have members that ethnically identify with these groups, but yet they are created specifically to voice the concerns and needs. So those of you who are looking to be active and civically engaged, you can start by soliciting your member if you need to make sure that your group is represented. But this is also fascinating, never been done before. So these these untapped constituencies are becoming more and more important. So with that being said, I wanna, and we can just go down the line here, talk to us about how you encourage, what's your story? And to this audience, because in this room, we're really talking to our peers and colleagues, right? We get it, we organize, there's a blueprint for organizing. But how do we coalition build? How do we get our fellow brothers and sisters to really join the cause when so many of them are actually disproportionately affected by some of the very services you're providing? They don't have the space or time to be engaged, but yet we need them. So tell us about yourself first, and then we can dive into that question.
Thank you, everybody. Just say thank you to everybody. Thank you to the DC Government of African Affairs, and thanks to dear excellencies who are here. Actually, we have strong chapters in all this country. In Benin, that's where we started GIN with the President Onyai. In Gambia, in Guinea Equatorial as well. So for my story, I don't think I have much to say. You already said everything, so I don't think I have anything to say for that.
Well, you can still talk to us about sort of what how did you get to where you could have done a lot of things, right? But organizing among your community is important. Why and how did you get to where you are today?
If I knew that was the question, the first question that would be asked to me, I wouldn't be here. So this is your fault, Mom. But I think as a member of the diaspora, the African diaspora.
Yeah, we have a lot of responsibilities here in the US because, like I think Ambassador Arana said, because of our educational background, our diverse background, we really need to be committed and need to be engaged in what the diaspora is doing here. But before I think I get to the opportunity, I want to just speak to the challenges a little bit. When I came here in this country, I think my first challenge was pretty much to integrate the culture of this country. I came from a country where, you know, we like to eat around the board, we like to do things, you know, in a group. And here, I remember my first 3 months, I live in an apartment in Adams Morgan, and every time I get up and to go to work, I share the elevator with the same people, I share the bus with the same people, but we never say hi to each other. They always smile at me. And I was just looking at them and saying, what's wrong? Yeah. They smiling, but they're not saying anything. So that's the first challenge. How do you understand people? So at that point I was saying, really, this is not a place that I want to be, because I don't think people are welcoming, I don't think people are friendly. But later on what I realized is that it's the system, how the system is built. People are not rushing for prestige. People are rushing for prestige, they're rushing for success. Because there is so many things that really they need to fight on. First, if you're going to school, you have maybe a big student loan that you have to fight, so you're rushing to find a job. So that's one challenge that we really need to figure out. The second thing is, as a member of the diaspora, when you're dealing with the food, it's something also challenging. I remember my first time I went to McDo, they gave me this small sandwich. I said, this is so small, I can finish it. So I was eating it every day because I had to go to school, but I feel like it wasn't enough for me. Where do I find the big rice that we know? Where do I find the kids that I know to be able to eat that? So I just wanted to go give those small examples. Of course, they are really small, but there are things that if I had somebody, a big brother, or if I had other friends who welcomed me in this country, I wouldn't have that problem, because I will be sharing all those things. They'll orient me. Like, orientation in a new culture is really important. How do you orient newcomers to integrate the culture, to integrate the system, to understand the system, especially in this country where I think financial management or financial literacy is really important. That's why I really give kudos to the DC African Affairs for everything they're doing in terms of teaching people financial management. So how do we get together to make sure that when we have new people coming here, we welcome them? And regardless of your country, of course, Africa is a big continent, it's 54 countries. We have more than 2,000 languages, so you cannot say that we are all the same, and we don't eat the same thing, we don't think the same way. But at the same time, I think the proximity of having somebody you look like, somebody who can kind of understand, or the culture is kind of similar, can help you, ground you in a way that once you get here, you will be able to figure out what to do next, what are the next move. It's the same way that we recommend young people, we recommend young professionals to find mentor. I think coming to a new country, also the cultural mentorship, the oriental mentorship, that's really what I would recommend. That really helped me to get here. Thanks.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Just want to say it's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. Anytime I have an opportunity to talk about service and volunteerism, it's always leads to a great deal of excitement. Really, I credit volunteerism and service with, develop me into the person that I've been fortunate enough to become. In regards to my personal journey, I was very fortunate to be reared in a household where service was the norm. My parents gave of themselves. It just was expected. They didn't do it for any sort of acclaim. There wasn't Facebook or Twitter. There wasn't a Humanitarian of the Year award connected to the end. There wasn't selfies. They just did it. They did it. And as a result of their example, it just became a way of life. But, something unexpected, happened during that process. I started to feel vested, in my community. I started to feel as if, hey, guess what? I now know these issues. I do have something to offer to my community. It gave me a greater sense of ownership. So it's really, what has been my journey. For me, it's never been enough just to be a part, of an environment, of an institution, of a school, of a place of, a place of employment. You feel as, hey, I have a sense of ownership here. So for me, in regards to how it connects specifically to this community, I can't think of a better way, in particular, to galvanize, to network, to build your self-esteem, your own capacities, to network with one another, to really say that, hey, we matter through service. It's a continuum to leadership, and I really feel like, that desire to service is that first step.
Thank you, Madam Chair. She's asked us to tell a story, and I like telling a story because I feel like it's one of the ways to make sure that people personally connect with you. So my story in terms of how I got here, you saw my bio. It's very short because I'm still young, so I'll get there eventually. Hopefully by the time we meet, it's probably going to be a 2-page bio. But in terms of how I got here, as you saw in my bio, I work in public health, but what's really brought me here is my passion in working with young women in rural communities. And my story came in a sense that when I finished in South Africa it's called a matric. So when I graduated from my matric, I had to take what is called a gap year now. But for me, this was not voluntarily. It was as a result because when I finished high school, I did not understand what avenues were available for me. I did not understand which colleges I could apply to. I could not understand where I could source funding. So for someone who has this information readily available to them, this is something they take for granted. But for someone who doesn't have this information, it means it's another year that's lost, and who knows what that might lead to. So I was fortunate enough, though, that during that gap year that I took, that I had people who were really interested in seeing me develop. And as a result, they started showing me and pointing me into the right direction. And as a result, I've been able to get here because, it's a snowballing effect where when someone does something and, it's a trickle effect. And this is exactly why I'm here, because I want to make sure that even if it's just one girl or one boy, I'm able to do that for the next person. So I always say I have a 9-to-5 job and then I have a 6-to-8 job. So it's the 6-to-8 job that's really brought me here, how I can strengthen my leadership skills so that I can start developing other young girls and young boys that are coming behind me.
Pleasant good evening. It's my pleasure to be here. I want to first start by thanking Mamadou, good friend of mine many, many years. Is also on the panel, Delano as well. It's good when good friends remember you after several years. So thank you so much, Mamadou. For me, it's been a long road to freedom. So that's sort of the sentiment I'll start with. So for me, I wanted to be a pastor when I was very young. So look to your neighbor and say it's been a long road to freedom. That's sort of the journey I think for myself in the US. I'm originally from Trinidad and Tobago. It's a very, very tiny island. I say Trinidad and Tobago, so that means I'm from Tobago, with the smaller version. 80,000 people on my island. I came to the US in 2003 with about $800 in my pocket. Got into University of DC on a small scholarship, but $800 was to last me for as long as my journey could take me. $800 ran after about 6 months. I became homeless after 2 years living in Washington, DC. Had no place to go. My mentor took me in, and while really living from house to house, from couch to couch, from floor to floor, you really discovered that you really had to serve. And it's just opposed to my life growing up in the islands. I was that young person, 6, 7 years old on the beach, chasing the doves away from the turtles. I was that person who was trying to protect the ocean, and came to the US to try to be the next Mandela, actually. I wrote an essay in high school that became my scholarship essay. It wasn't Nelson Mandela essay. Got here to the land of opportunities and immediately just figured out it's much harder than it looks on television. I found this organization called Life Pieces to Masterpieces about 5 years ago. After finishing grad school, after spending 9 months at the UN. It's an organization that really centered on the development of black men and boys living right here in Washington, DC. And under the national context where you see many of our brothers being shot, being killed, being murdered for seamlessly everyday situations, we need to really think in unison about what can we do. When we're walking down the street, no one can tell whether we're African American, African, or Afro-Caribbean. So we have to have a united front in this conversation that regards our black men and boys. And that's the work that we've been doing in DC for the last 20 years as an organization. So I'm glad to be here to share our thoughts on leadership and volunteerism, but that's my journey. Thank you.
I want to
to all of you for sharing your stories. I want to turn it over to Mr. Hunter. You and I were talking earlier about the benefits of volunteerism, and your agency, you do a lot of that kind of coordination. Talk to us about the effort. So what's the biggest challenge for you getting folks to serve? And what are the benefits of volunteering?
Thank you. I think that for me, what we find is that I think that many folks have a desire, to be of service. And many folks want to do what they feel is right. They want to make a contribution. They recognize that they have skills to offer. The biggest barrier that we see in our work is that, at times folks don't know how to connect. What I've always been a big proponent, it doesn't take a fancy organization, it doesn't take letterhead, it doesn't take a Twitter following with thousands of folks. It's just literally, finding and connecting to something that, you are passionate about. And that's one of the things that, I encourage folks when they're looking for actual opportunities. In regards to the actual benefits, there are plenty of studies that talk about individual, benefits, that higher self-esteem, being able to network with a feeling of being vested in one's community, that leads that are from service. But from a community standpoint, here, and I've seen it time and time again in the District of Columbia, those folks that are active, within communities, they help to determine where resources are. There's like a continuum. They come in, and it may be folks may come in, and it may be a small community cleanup. Then the next thing you know, it's adopting a block. Then the next thing you know, it's negotiating with the city in regards to the quality of services on that block. And then it becomes a public safety conversation. Then it becomes a workforce development conversation. What you start to see is that, service is an entryway to folks feeling invested within their community. And then that can lead to a broader conversation about improving one's community's quality of life. So, I've just seen it time and time again. I would just tell folks just to roll up your sleeves and kind of get in the game. At that point, don't figure it all out. Just get out with a heart to serve. And at that point, what you'll find is that your gift and your passion will start to make room for you, and then after that, things will develop.
Great. I'll ask a few more questions, and we'll turn it over to you all for some questions. So, Ms. Mikize, I want to turn it over to you. You talked about the work you do with in rural communities with women. What are some of the public health challenges that you're seeing there? And just given your experience here through the Mandela Washington Fellowship, how have your views changed about strategies to engage the diaspora in cultivating leadership and getting them to volunteer to do the same work that you're doing?
Yeah. Thank you. So, looking at the term itself, leadership, we're always talking about leadership, but what is it? It's a term that seems to be, that seems to evolve with each era. But essentially, when we think about leadership, we've always thought about people who are someone who's leading a group, could be someone that's leading a country or a small project. But essentially, when we think about leaders, we're thinking about people who are paradigm shifters, who are able to change things with the way how they view the world in their critical analysis. And just taking it back in with leadership in the diaspora, with the work that I've done in communities, is that it's really important to strength is in numbers. For instance, if you look at this pamphlet, it says Young African Connection. The operative word here is connection. The strength is in numbers. We can only get much done if we work together. I was in awe when I started my the fellowship program, because I'm sitting with 25 other young leaders from all over who are equally brilliant in their own rights. And so I'm sitting and I'm thinking, if this is a drop of what Africa can offer, why is Africa so poverty-stricken? Why is there so much war? And one of the gaps is that we want to work in silos, and it's really important that we need to all start coming to the table. We need to all start working together, because the strength here is in numbers and is in partnerships. And it's not just us in Africa, it's also engaging the diaspora here and understanding the numbers, understanding the distributions as the skills as well. Because once you understand who you have and the skills that they have, it is then easier to harness that to make sure that whether we cultivate the next leaders, the next accountant, we really understand who we're working with. So I was really excited when I heard the director that they're going to start collecting data, because once we better understand who we have, the distribution and the skills, then we can better cultivate what are the skills that we're looking for in the diaspora.
That answer. So my last question is going to go to our last two panelists, Mr. Waldron and Mr. Sam. One of the things I like to do is, in a lot of these conversations where we talk about organizing and what the African diaspora needs to do, we often lose ourselves in the conversation of what's not happening as opposed to what is happening, right? And so part of our job here, and as our job to all of us as leaders and organizers, is to demystify the myth that there is no blueprint for change, that there is, that we are organizing, that there are several diaspora organizations and others, all of you across the world and across this country that are doing these things. So I want you to talk to me about your two organizations and tell us what's working and why.
So I'll definitely start. So I'll start first just by echoing what was just said. There is a space for the African diaspora in service. I'll start with the facts first. The Bureau of Labor Statistics put out a report, I think it was earlier this year, that showed the demographics of folks who volunteer. And by and large, about 27-28% of folks who volunteer are Caucasian, mostly white females. Looking at the African American or Black diaspora that volunteer in America, is about 18%. So look at Hispanic Latino, it drops to about 14%. In my organization, we have about 67 volunteers. We are a organization that's focused, laser focused on developing Black men and boys. Out of our 67 current volunteers, we have about 5 Black men who volunteer with us. So I want to definitely stress the need, this tremendous need for the diaspora to volunteer, to serve in any particular way, whether it's an hour, whether it's a few hours a week, coming and serving. Life Pieces to Masterpieces is 20 years old. We have an after school, that's a daily program, ages 3 through 13. We serve about 160 students every single day from about 16 different schools. We also have a college prep program as well. We serve about 25 young men, high school, middle school ages, every Saturday on the campus of George Washington University. Get them ready for college. They spend 10 months in the program. We have a 100% graduation rate from high school, 100% college access for our young men in the last 10 years. We're also the only organization in Washington, D.C. that trains Black men to become teachers in our school system. Nationally, that's a profession that has locked out, closed out, shut out Black men for a long time. Only about 2% of our teachers in our public schools in the U.S. are Black male. In D.C., about 9% are Black males. So Life Pieces to Masterpieces is the only organization that trains Black men, places them in the school system. They go through 8 months of training and are placed. So really, by and large, a young person, a Black man, can start in our program at ages 3, go through the after school, go through a college prep program, go through a workforce program, become a teacher, and then go all through the cycle again, preparing our younger students. So we need volunteers to do this work in every aspect of our organization.
For us, I think what works was the learning, so being able to know what we call the knowledge product, and also the experimental learning, and what you call here service, or what we call the community-led. I think those three really work for us, because if I use the example of the Global Youth Innovation Network, the idea really was something that came from Latin America in Colombia, when a couple of organizations really brought more than 200 youth and wanted to help them figure out how to create employment for themselves. But the youth didn't get any chance to pretty much express themselves, to identify their problems, to share solutions. With this, the so-called experts like me and others were talking, for 5 days. But once we realized that this is not working, we challenged all those organizations and said, how about we let the youth themselves identify their problems? How about we let them themselves suggest solutions? And if we can, we come up with resources, we come up with knowledge. And then that's how all came together, and we went to Benin with the leadership of Boniai. We were able to bring more than 200 youth, and Benin brought almost 1,000 youth. So for 3 days, pretty much the youth themselves were the moderators, were the facilitators, they organized the whole conference,
yeah, it wasn't easy because we had experts there who were saying, we've been in this field for 25 years, how can we just come up one day and let the youths, stand up there and start telling us what to do? So, but that was really challenging. But what happened after was really important. And this is what happened after. For a year, the young people, when they went back to their respective countries, they were meeting every day on Skype, no, every Sunday on Skype, for a year to figure out how can they apply what they learned at the workshop in their respective countries. After 3 years, that same model was replicated in 88 countries. And if you look at what happened in Colombia 3 years before, those organizations were there, all of them, or most of them, each one from Italy, from Holland, from Brazil, from Africa, from the US here. They were saying that they spend a lot of money, billions of dollars invested in youth programs, but they weren't able to create much job. Now, when the youth took over and took ownership of their own program, really something happened. That's why I said first, the community-led, which is in our case, the youth-led. Second, the learning, by giving them the time to try to figure out what's the problem on their own, and then coming to support them with resources, with expertise, which we did later on because we brought in universities, we brought in organizations, we brought in UN institutions to come to support with that learning really, that will help them figure out that this is what we can do, because they came back and said, yes, we thought we could do everything on our own, but now we can identify the problems, we can suggest the solutions, but we need your support to teach us. That's how Columbia Business School came into the picture and said we're going to train 5,000 African youth. That's how EcoBank came into, that's how IFAD came into the picture. So a lot of organizations come into the picture to try to do that. So really what I'm sharing with you is the community-led, let people identify it. Even if it's service, even if it's businesses, they have their own interests, but communities themselves, they have needs. How do you make sure that you link those two that will really trigger the solution? Thank you.
All right, great. So we're going to go to questions now, and please take it away.
Good evening. My name is Shade Oshinubi. I sit on the board of the United People for African Congress and the Northern Virginia Urban League Young Professionals Network. One of the issues that we face from both organizations is cultivating young leaders to run for public office. So one of the things you mentioned in your opening statement was that we have some of these congressional caucuses, and they're represented by people who are not members of those communities. So I want to know what your recommendation is for getting our young adults interested in running for elected office.
That's a great question. Or do you want, I'll let you all answer if you have, I mean, being that you're, because it really comes from local organizing, right? And it's a great, great question. Some of it has to do with sort of, again, are these untapped constituencies, the new generation, the second generation, learning how to assimilate into mobilizing in an American polity that doesn't always acknowledge different ways of organizing, right? And so now our presence, our numbers are growing. As she said, strength in numbers helps. We are seeing some folks run at a local level, but you can look no other to the president, the son of a Kenyan father, to know that in the next decade we are likely to see, and we can turn to our own director Samba, who has just made waves in right here in the District of Columbia, to know that we're on the cusp of some great leaders that will take up these offices. But the organizing is difficult. It's not easy, and it requires strategic, operations that you have to reach beyond, right, our communities in order to identify and coalition build around similar issues, right? And what are those issues? We can talk about voting, but what are we voting for? The ambassador mentioned we're the highest foreign-born educated population, but we're also highly underemployed in the U.S., right? We are suffering from poverty, from language barriers. We are not taking full advantage of the rights and benefits that U.S. citizenship offers. And guess what? That's actually the story for a lot of communities right here in the U.S. So how do you be a bridge builder? I want to turn it over to my colleagues here if there are any additional comments.
Please.
And another thing, let me mention too, just to jump in, because one thing I realized, and I was in Benin 3 years ago, and the country's doing a fabulous job with giving platforms to young people to organize. We were part of a young women's empowerment group, and what I realized is actually there are a lot of young elected members of parliament that we can turn to. Those of you who came and joined, you can teach us in the U.S. of how to, what we can do it. And I want to mention, just because you say young doesn't mean it's inexperienced, right? And we have doctors, lawyers, organizers, members of parliament that are the same age we are, right? That are already integrating themselves in the system. And that's not necessarily the case here in the U.S. So this is a two-way street of communication, and I welcome actually some of the fellows to join us in line and share your stories with us as well. Go ahead.
My suggestion is that to get people to do something, I think it's really difficult, like you said, but I think what needs to be done is to give them the options and how policies can impact their real life. Because for some people, especially young people, policy making is something that's way, like, something that's not real in their case, because they don't understand how this policy can really impact this thing. So I'll give you an example in Africa, and I'll also give you an example here. And since Ambassador Aaron is here, I'm always using this country. In Benin, when we launched GIN, it was, I think it took a month to create a business. And then the young people organized themselves, and we have a lot of young people right now who are like traveling all over the world. You know them very well, Vital and all those things. So they came together after the summit and the chapter started and said they really want to figure out a way that they can start a business easily. And it's because Boni Yayi, the president, hosted the whole delegation, 300 youth, for almost a whole day within the presidential palace. And they presented all the recommendations and the suggestions. Afterward, they went back to him and said, Willie, now that we have this support, we want to start business. And it takes pretty much a month or more than a month to start this business. And sometimes the support or the banks that are funding us, sometimes they just decided that these young people are not serious because we cannot find. So when they went back to the president, they were able to get that to be changed to 3 days. So that's an example. Now, in the US case, to get people to involve in policy, especially the African diaspora, it's a little bit different. Because you have members, Africans who are here just to get higher education and to go home. So to convince those, you have to convince them first to stay. Do they want to stay? We don't know. The ones that want to stay, or even the ones who don't want to stay, how do you show them that being involved in policy making will impact their life in terms of student loan, in terms of tuition, in terms of maybe immigration law? I think those are really close to make it realistic to them to know that it's not only the policies that you're making, it's how it will impact your life later on that you will need to be part of it. And you have a voice that should count, and then your voice should count, and you should be involved to make it, because if you don't have the numbers, it won't work. Thanks.
I just wanted to say, I can recall running for local office at the age of 25. I didn't win, I probably should have won. It wasn't my time, but it was such an empowering experience. And for me, it probably was a result from being engaged at such a young age. I may have been 25 years old, but I've been around these issues for 15, 20 years in regards to hearing about it, so to speak. So I would say 2 things. One, the younger you can get folks involved. If you're part of an institution, faith-based organization, higher education, if they're young folks, they're empowered, and give them some ownership, some equity. Allow them to make decisions for themselves, because you'll have a more engaged person as an adult. And as an adult, I would encourage you, and I was a part of Thursday Network, so very familiar with just the folks, the caliber of folks there. I think now it's about supporting organizations that actually encourage folks. I know, I think it's this evening, there's a group of young folks, no, it was last night, called The Collective. It's a PAC that they started to encourage men and women of color to demystify the process of running for office, to actually give them the training and the resources. So there are tons of organizations like that on all sides of the spectrum, left, right, center, nonpartisan,
support those organizations financially with your time, with your talent. Those organizations, and I've seen it. I've seen it in very informal ways that those organizations support candidates that run for office and then ultimately are elected.
Thank you. Thanks. All right. So we are out of time, so what I would like last to just quickly state your question, and then we're gonna take it around, give us sort of one key takeaway from this. So question, please. Yeah.
My question is in regards to all of your innovations and all of your and what your organization is passionate about. How can you replicate it and scale that, not only in DC but in other areas as well? And also, how can you get municipal government and also high levels of government to foster an environment, enabling environment for those innovations? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Since the protocol has already been set, since people ought to feed themselves spiritually, mentally, and physically, to Brother Pepe in Benin, how do we unpack Father Godfrey and the Songhai project there with producing food? And it would be remiss of me if I didn't say something to our person who's a graduate of the University of the District of Columbia. I salute you, Howard University and the Africa Affairs, because too seldom do we have people from the DC. I'm a graduate of 1982. I'm just asking this because too often we do a whole lot of things, but we ought to feed ourselves triumphantly plus. Let's talk about food, especially since Dr. Wangara Maathai, since before 2002, with women, with the planting of trees.
Thank you. So I'm going to leave it open and we can carry these conversations on because we're cutting into the next panel. So feel free to address, but just give us sort of a key takeaway that this audience should know moving forward.
Sure. So my response is going to be to you around the question that you asked. So for instance, in the program that I work with, we really try to encourage the youth to volunteer. So we work through pilot projects, and depending on the success of the project, then we replicate. But it also goes back to the point again of working together, working in partnership, because we need to understand the context for your community for us to be able to get in there. And one thing that I wanted to add from the question that was asked earlier about the youth volunteering, one of the issues we experience as youth is that we feel that even though there are platforms that have been provided, is that the feedback is not integrated into the plans, so it discourages us. So I'm very glad that all our seniors are here, is that, you know, it's just, we need to take it a step further, where we not just provide the platform, but we need to make sure that our voices are heard by seeing that it's implemented in, for instance, national plans. Thank you.
I'm going to be brief. I want to respond to the first question, actually. I think, you know, the matter of leadership and who's next. As a diaspora, we do have a challenge of ageism. I'll tell you the truth. I mean, anecdotally, in my organization, the previous CEO led it for 18 years. She was very humble in stepping down and building my leadership up after 4 years of providing trainings and sending me to leadership development. But as a diaspora, we struggle with that. We struggle with reaching back and bringing the next person forward. You look at sort of the ideal Congress candidate there, that the Yale graduates and they were part of the same fraternity and they brought the other person in. At diaspora, we have to keep mentoring the next person behind us. That's what we have to do. That's the honest truth.
In regards to scaling, sustainability, I think that, you know, I spoke about, you know, the first step is just kind of getting out there, you know, letting your gift and your passion make room for you. And as you start to grow, that is an issue. I think that most folks do find success, and then trying to replicate that success is where they run into, issues. I do think that there are a ton of resources, specifically within our collegiate community, with academics and intellectuals that can help you to provide, to build an evidence-based model. So once you've already
prove that at your local level, or to try to get someone behind it that can actually build an evidence-based model. And then there are a ton of organizations that help with building capacity. I'm proud of Serve DC's work with the Taproot Foundation, which has a national presence, and they're actually partners of ours, and I've been impressed with the work that they have done to take an organization from A to B, from B to C, et cetera. So I think that there are resources. So first, once you develop that passion, you develop an evidence-based model, then second, you tap into places that can provide resources to help you scale.
Just quickly with the scaling of the innovation, I think for us, first you have to know if it's innovation or not, because there is a lot of things that people call innovation when they are not innovation. So it has to be a new product or a new service in a new market. But what we need to make sure also as well is, do they have the champions? Do they have the ecosystem? Do they have the policy? Do they have the success stories to inspire other people? Is the cultural context adaptable or real or all those things? But once that happens, in everywhere that we work with the government, we work with the youth, we work with the local organization, we work with the educational institution. So the replication depends on the local community and having inspired other community to want it, to want to have it from us so we can work with them to adapt it in the local context. So that's one. The second question is about food and Father Godfrey. I don't know the guy who asked the question. Yes, over there.
Professor Ojuno. Baba Ojuno.
Okay. So about food in the Songhai Center in Godfrey, what I can tell you is the Songhai Center is really a center of excellence, recognized by the UN and all those things. But when it comes to food, that's really what I want to talk about, because we have the Songhai Center, but also we have the Jain Irrigation is India, which is 10 times bigger than the Songhai Center. It's different. But when it comes to food, especially in Africa, what the problem, in my own opinion, that we're having right now, if you go to Italy with the slow food, if you go to Feed the Planet, if you go to IFAD, if you go to Israel, anywhere, what they're talking about, even UN, is how do you get young people to feed the world? And for me, that's totally wrong. And also the second thing they always say, how do you bring young people to agriculture? That's totally wrong. Because you should bring agriculture to young people. That's one. 60% of our farmers in Africa are older than 60. So you look at in 20 years who's gonna feed the world. Of course that's the problem. But do they want to do agriculture the way their grandparents were doing it? No. So how do you bring agriculture to youth? It's not mechanized, it's not subsidized in Africa. So that's the problem. That's where I think we should work the problem, where we create agribusinesses. Young people should see agriculture as a business, not as a survival activity. So that's one. Second, and the last thing, yes. So we don't bring young people to feed the world because they want to feed themselves. How do you rebrand it to create jobs within agriculture so young people can come to agriculture? Thank you.